Professor shows how insane DEI really is and leaves students speechless. All right, guys, let's see what they say here.
Because he is so honest and blunt about this, this is a rare conversation where you can actually see the students transform.
So you're getting a chance to hear what these 4 college students are thinking about this.
This Professor Sam Richards shows his students the reality of why DEI is so problematic.
Right.
Seatbelts buckled. Dude, I'm excited. I'm literally excited for this because I love thought experiments where you explain to somebody in real time how whatever their view is might be skewed, and how you yourself need to remove yourself from the situation and look back into it. Because when you're in situations, it's very easy not to see either outside of them or understand how people perceive you from outside. We had prime examples of this like 10 minutes ago, right?
Now I just know that Trump did something with it, but that's pretty much all I know.
So they've heard whisperings of Trump finding DEI problematic, wanting to address it, but they're not quite sure why.
Hasn't he been talking about getting rid of the DEI?
Do you have a sense of why? So it takes us away from merit. It's costly, right? It's unnecessary. It's
up front. I'm going to say that it seems that this professor has a clear bias, and I don't know if he's doing that to try and drive his own personal narrative or if this bias is here because of the class, right? So one thing I want to like preface this whole thing is we do not know this professor or like his views or his beliefs on anything, and we're only seeing a snippet from a very specific class. So like before people like run to the comments section, keep in mind that a lot of what he's saying without us knowing, and maybe we'll get more throughout the video, could just be to try to help these students think critically. Because I think critical thinking is something that is lacking in today's modern world, which is the ability to stop, look at something, and think about it in a very fact of the matter way, without any emotion, and just to try and look at it.
It's unfair because it's not based on merit, right? So it's unfair.
You are choosing people based upon their identity and imposing a quota based on that identity. But we have many students on the stage do think DEI is good, forced outcomes. They even use the word forced, and forced outcomes are a good thing according to them.
For me, I'm like a big fan of the like forced quote unquote DEI because I think making that progression is like necessary to kind of come back to like a balance in the middle.
In their minds, it seems that if we don't force that outcome, we won't get the momentum in the right direction. That seems to be the argument here.
Regardless of how qualified you are, how is it problematic for you to be a DE&I hire?
So now Sam is going to try and show the same student, well, wait a minute, there's more.
You stray away from merit. You have an issue of potentially having a pilot who's less qualified for the job. You want to risk dying in a plane crash so you can ensure the pilot is competent enough to fly the actual plane? Absolutely. And that's where I think this professor is going to try to make the argument. Now, that's not to say that there aren't issues within our society, and there aren't issues of people not having access to the same types of education and healthcare due to economic standing, right? Like being poor and not having the same access, and how that might disproportionately affect certain groups or regions or races. There's a whole conversation about that. And I think that is the issue that needs to be addressed, instead of just saying, well, we have to hire these people for a DEI quota. We should be looking at it and going, how can we fix the system to ensure like everybody, including poor people, no matter who or what they are, have the same access to the same education, blah blah blah, so they can grow up, so they can themselves be more qualified, so then they're hired. And that is not there's not like a fast silver bullet to do that. That takes a lot of time. And while you do that, you're going to have disparities. And while you have those disparities, things are going to be a little bit unfair. But you can't force things. If you try to force a square peg into a round hole, you're going to have a lot of other problems when you're done.
More to this than you think.
He could be underqualified.
Dude, no one knows if you're qualified.
And this is remarkable because this is exactly what Charlie Kirk was saying when he got so much flack for the comment about airline pilots. And Sam is showing the...
In a perfect world, DEI wouldn't exist, but as you said, our society is flawed. DEI helps create a better tomorrow for the underserviced. And I understand that, right, Barbosa? And I understand the logic behind it. And I understand the logic behind like trying to include people who come from like underrepresented groups. But I do think that a lot of the underrepresentation comes from a lack of opportunity, and those lacks of opportunity stem more from socioeconomics than they do from like race or identity. And I think that like race and identity is something that is used to keep people not paying attention to the socioeconomic problems. But economics is a race problem, and I think that's the conversation, right? That's like a tough conversation to have. I don't think that anyone could argue that it doesn't disproportionately, like these things don't disproportionately affect certain groups. It disproportionately affects them because of the system that's already in place. So because the status quo is there, they get disproportionately affected. So if poverty wasn't as much of an issue across the board, then everybody would be getting sort of the same opportunities presented to them, and then hopefully be able to capitalize on them because there's no economic restriction on them. And then because of that, those people would then raise up, like they would get higher level promotions. They would move to different levels in their jobs. They would raise their socioeconomic standards in a way that they can then afford to do better for the other people below them and create like a generational wealth, which then gives them more of a seat at the table and puts them in a position of more prominence. And in doing that, you will create a more diverse system because everybody has access to the same level of equity, and equity is what's going to give you voting room at the table. It's going to take much, much longer. But I think that the counterpoint to that, Barbosa, is if you just promote people to check a box that you are not giving other people the right through merit. And why does somebody else who did nothing wrong have to be punished for just existing in a system when you could work on the system and work on wiping out the problem at the bottom? It's just going to take longer. And I think that like a one-size-fits-all solution will never work. And I think that any one solution in and of itself, we talk about it all the time with gaming, right? Like you need more tools in your toolbox than just a hammer. And I think that if you use tools and apply them properly to certain situations, that everything works out well. But the problem is some tools are being applied unilaterally in situations where they don't need to be applied. And when you do that, it causes more harm than good. And then people who are on the opposite end and feel that they were punished just for the fact that they exist become resentful. And then you end up with extremists. I've seen people gain opportunities they might not have ascended to without it, but I've also seen people take advantage of it for their own malicious ends. Absolutely. As a comparison, much like the no tolerance system in schools benefit the most malicious students. Absolutely. Like anytime there's a rule, people are going to find a way to bend it and abuse it.
Exact same logic here.
I'm always going to look at you as suspicion. Who would look at you as suspicion? You're going to look in a mirror and you're going to be going like, hey, Sam, am I really, is this it?
All three of these students have pointed out reasons why they think it's necessary.
You're evening the playing field.
For me, like equity is just, like you said, giving people what they need.
Wait, but you're studying nuclear engineering.
Yeah.
You're going to go out into the workplace as a woman studying nuclear engineering. Yeah. When you start looking for jobs, what would be forcing diversity in the places where you're going to work?
I mean, like hiring me solely because I'm a woman, I guess.
Well, what do you think about that?
She makes it clear, I would not want to be hired based off of my gender. I want to be hired because I'm qualified, because I'm the right person for that job.
I mean, I would like to be hired just like as a nuclear engineer rather than like seen as like just we're going to take her because she's a brown woman or yeah.
Mm-hmm. Seems logical. Who would disagree with that? Well, the student next to her does.
I actually kind of disagree with what she just said because if certain DEI initiatives weren't forced, no one would have been proactive enough to get them done.
So it's the exact same argument. We have to have it forced in order to have the momentum in the right direction, even though there are all these unintended consequences, which they're not really thinking through here, I don't think.
I mean, my mom, she's surrounded by all men at her level.
Okay.
And that's how it's been throughout like her whole career.
Uh-huh.
And it's recently gotten better. Sometimes the like initiatives or the fact that you want a certain amount of diversity in your work, like, and the fact that it's forced is helpful.
And I do think that obviously in any level of business, having differing viewpoints is a benefit. And I think anybody that's been in business any amount of time knows that just having a bunch of like yes men around you is a problem. But part of this is just allowing the market to work, right? Like if you just surround yourself with one type of person, with one type of messaging, with one type of narrative, and it's unsuccessful, then your business will fail just due to capitalism, right? It's the exact same thing. I talk to college students who are smart, but they don't have the experience. Well, I'm not like trying to get into like whoever, like Charlie Kirk or anything. I don't know anything about Charlie Kirk. Who are smart, but they don't have the experience, more real world. No. And it's fine. Like, and that's where like there's always going to be different opinions. And I think that, at least for me, Barbosa, and like, I can see like you and Spritter having a conversation. I'm letting you guys have a conversation. I don't need to be involved in it. But I think that and maybe I'm old, right? Like, so maybe this is just old. Like, maybe this is just old man talking. I remember sitting across the table from people who have completely different worldviews from me. You're 40, you hear me? Yeah. So like, we can have different worldviews, and we can go at each other till we're blue in the face. But like at the end of the day, you can be like, all right, man, we just don't agree on this. Want to have a beer? And it's like, yeah, let's talk about something else. And then you just go have a beer, right? Like you're like, man, I don't like, we don't have to box just because we have a different viewpoint. And I understand some of these conversations can get really, really, really tense because they go to people's identities, because these beliefs, at least some beliefs, people root their identity in certain beliefs. And because of that, some conversations can feel like personal attacks, and you can be like, Jesus, man, dude, just like get off my dick. Like, let's fight. But at the end of the day, I think that it's fun to have good conversations and talk about things and try to understand why people have these viewpoints. Yeah, like as long as people aren't like literally going at each other, like I'll let conversations happen in chat. So, because like I don't care, right? Like we don't all agree. If you have to force it, it's probably shit. Lol. But yeah, so I think that it's fun. And like for me, like I said before, like this professor could have an entire agenda with what he's doing here. But for me, from the outside, only seeing this conversation, I view it as somebody saying, hey, college is one of those places where diversity and like all these things is like bred in college. And he's going, hey, all four of you guys have like a very similar or the same worldview. My job as a professor is to challenge that worldview and to get you to look at it and go, is it right? Like, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. For the sake of argument, I am saying it's wrong. But right now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I want you to stop and think critically about what you're saying and then make a decision. Because if you've thought through all of these things and you've thought through everything that I'm bringing up and you still feel the same way, then it's probably right. If I can bring up a bunch of counterpoints, and give you time to like think about it and it doesn't like jive, then you at least need to stop and think about it, right?
So, but why does it need to be forced? Like they gonna find, if there are qualified women.
That is the question. Why does it need to be forced? If it's forced, by definition, you are not hiring the person most qualified for the job. You are hiring them for other characteristics.
Absolutely.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that to take like that out of consideration.
She thinks she can have both at the same time, where it's like, we want to hire the most qualified person, but we
call you a fence sitter. I just see things how you see them. I think most people are that way, Sprit. I think that the bulk of at least the U.S. Has opinions across the gambit. They might have more opinions on one side or the other, but I think most people have views just like across the spectrum.
We also want to increase women. You're either the most qualified person or you're not. The two can't coexist.
Like, I think that if you put a overqualified woman and an underqualified man next to each other, there are certain people who are going to choose the man because he's a man.
But that would mean that person is not hiring the most qualified person. If that's you being a fool, and your business is going to suffer as a consequence.
So like, I'll get to your comment here in a second, but I think that her point it is fair and valid. And I think his counterpoint is fair and valid. And I think this is where things get a little bit to be a gray area. If you have a qualified woman and an underqualified male, and you hire the male because it's a bros club, right? Then in theory, you are harming your business by doing that. And in a free market, you're allowed to do that. But there will be financial ramifications for doing that to your company long term. And if you continue to do that over and over and over again, in theory, your company will fail because you're constantly putting your emotions over top of what's the best for your company, which you should never do. And that is the exact same thing as hiring people to fill a quota. You are constantly putting people in positions because of your feels and not because they're the best for the position. And you can kind of see how well that works in certain companies now who seem to have prioritized this type of dynamic. And in doing so, they move away from what the consumer wants and they try to move into forced messaging. And when you do that, the product fails and then the company sort of suffers because of it. Yeah, at some point, choose the best person for the team dynamic. I think that in general, you should always choose the person that fits best with qualifications in your team dynamic because you need both to keep the wheels on the bus moving.
And even if they're not doing it consciously, they might just do it.
That could occur, but we can't police unconscious stupidity. That's not a justification.
But I understand where the girl came from, and I understand the thought process behind it. And I think the thought process behind that, Budweiser nearly went out of business for it. Yep. You just need to understand your consumers and deal with that, right? I think that to the girl's point, I think there's a level of what she said happens, for sure. But I think in business at the top end, you would be stupid to do that. And I think that her understanding of the situation is driven by people who use that conversation to push DEI agendas and DEI narratives.
Maybe your mom got paid less, not.
Though these days I can see companies terrified of hiring a female in a mostly male environment. Absolutely. Yeah, it happens all the time in sales because you have to be afraid because you don't want to have somebody come in and shake up the team dynamic or come in and start disrupting the team. And there's a lot of reasons why that could happen. And you could say the same thing about an all-female environment. If you were to pick a job that was predominantly female and inject a bunch of high testosterone men in there, it could cause a problem.
Because someone decided, hey, you know what? Like, Sam, man, you and I, we got to figure out what we're going to pay Mitra's mom. Hang on. So you're not disagreeing with Sujana?
You're really enjoying this? Got to sleep through it since work, but thanks. Oh, man, Achilles, this video will be up on my alt channel here in a couple days. Like, we'll put this up on the alt channel so you can always catch the rest of the conversation, right?
What you're saying is, yeah, but hang on, here's this other side of it. Like, Sujana's saying, like, I don't want to force...
Like, I don't think that qualification shouldn't be taken into consideration at all. Like, if a man is more overqualified than a woman, then there's no reason why you shouldn't hire him and not the woman just because she's a woman.
Okay, but that contradicts what you said before. Because now you're arguing that the most qualified person should get the job. But those two ideas cannot coexist, where you're also taking into consideration, well, what is their gender, though? They're either most qualified or they're not.
But I think that we've made a lot of headway in the past 60 years when it comes to DEI, and I don't think we would have made that headway if it weren't for the fact that there were a lot of like initiatives and like encouragement and stuff like that.
What do these words mean, though? What does an initiative mean? What does encouragement mean? I still don't get, it doesn't make any sense, though, because you're still going to be looking for them.
When it comes to the video, the one you mistrust the most, this guy right here, yeah, I don't know that I fully am on board with everything he's saying, because I can definitely tell he's not looking things. I don't think this man's looking at things objectively. I think that he is also trying to drive some type of narrative.
Most qualified person.
If you're watching the stream, she's 18, all right? She's not an expert on DEI qualifications,
Absolutely.
work study. I could go get a professor who studies this been studying it for 30 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And if he went and got a professor who has been like very, very devout in DEI and like preached the Bible of DEI, and that could come in and cite study after study of why things work and why this works and why this is effective, this whole conversation would be going very different. But you could say the same thing as if you were to bring in somebody who's devoutly against it and has studies that can like show counterpoints from different journals. That's why there's such a conversation about it.
Come in and have the conversation. Mitra's 18, so this is her thought.
We had a conversation about the importance of this because these are college students. Most of them have not been challenged on these ideas before, and they have not thought these things through to this level.
Exactly. I'd be proud of them just standing in front of the lecture hall, espousing their opinions. No, I think so. And I think that it can be very intimidating. Like, you're in college, you're trying to state your opinions. You're not used to being in front of a lot of people. You're being put on the spot. You haven't had time to prepare, right? You haven't had time to prepare your thoughts and your counterpoints. You haven't went through these arguments on why you feel this way dozens or hundreds of times before. You're just saying why you think it. And then you have a professor who prepared this lecture and has probably done this dozens or hundreds of times before, that already has a bunch of counterpoints. Yeah, I think these students are doing a great job.
I'm super excited about this. I have a chance to go down and speak to this class in the coming days, and I'm doing it. I've been looking forward to it.
What if we come along and someone comes along and says, hey, listen, man, as in Mitra's mom's case, listen, you got this company here, you got this industry. Why do you have all these men in these top positions? Like, are there not women out here who are qualified to be in these positions? Like, come on, man. Like, what's going on?
And that's exactly what you're
right. And even like the professor, like, I feel like he's done this before, but he's not like somebody who's like, oh, in this particular job, in this particular field where you can make like very specific arguments. He's doing things in a very abstract way, which typically is what happens when you have like a working knowledge of something, but you haven't prepped to really get into like a hard fight.
Jordan Peterson did. That's when the illusion began to fall apart rapidly, because people quickly realized there's a lot more to this.
And you can say all you want about the fact that women have a difficult time with that because it's a male-dominant patriarchy. Any female lawyer who's hit 30 and is a partner that has any sense at all knows that's complete bloody rubbish. It's market determined right to the core.
You can go back and look at him talking to his students about this very topic. There are many factors that contribute to why there are probably going to be more men that are motivated for those positions. It's going to depend on the position, the circumstances. Do they have kids at home? Are they married? How old are they?
We've got things backwards in our culture. We're thinking, at least in part, why aren't there more women in positions of power? Wrong question. The right question is, why are there any men at all who want those positions of power? Because it's not just positions of power. You have to be such a knothead to think that. Oh, it's a position of power. It's like, sure, but it's a position of overwhelming responsibility. And if you make mistakes, you're done.
And we might find out.
I mean, yeah, I mean, but it's a position that makes money. And to like his point, like to whoever that was, his point before, you know, in a lot of situations, men were taught for however many years or generations, like they need to make a lot of money and that money is important. And then if you go to TikTok, every hot blonde on TikTok says she needs a man with a 7-figure salary, 6 foot tall, 6-pack, and all these other things. So like there are a lot of men competing for these jobs because their whole self-worth is basically tied to how much money they make and if they can provide, because that's what they've been told ever since they were a kid. And that's what we've been taught through evolution, right? If you can go out, you can kill the biggest buffalo, you can feed your wife, you can feed your kids, then you're the most successful like person in your tribe. Like, it's just evolution has taught people to think this way. You can't like undo evolution in 10 years.
Well, you know, really,
people in power don't always take responsibility for their mistakes. Tons of people in power don't take responsibility for their mistakes. I would actually say the bulk of people in power that I have ever met seemingly shirk responsibility like it is a bad cold they're trying to get rid of, man. They don't want to be anywhere near it. If it's a good idea, I did it. If it's a bad idea, the person I delegated it to did it, right? Dude, back then, our ancestors were trying to employ the dude with the biggest rock. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you want a guy to break rocks. You want the biggest guy you can get. No, I'll agree. I'll agree with that for sure, Panda Tech.
There's, women really are not wanting to be in these positions. And then you might discover that, hey, you know what? There actually isn't discrimination. There really aren't women who are really applying for the jobs, and like there's just not. And your mom would then say, oh, fuck, all right. There.
So to kind of his point here, and I'm going to go back to this for just a quick second. Unfortunately for a lot of women, there are definite like wants and needs to take time off. But a lot of times with like a lot of the like higher end jobs, you're typically required to be on 24/7 and you're required to do everything. And while there are say like women, and for the sake of this conversation, say there are women who are like, dude, I don't want kids. I never want kids. I don't want any of these things. I just want a career and I want to have a lot of money. That's really good. But for, I would say, the bulk of people, that is not the case. They want to have kids. They're going to need to take time off. And in a lot of these jobs, you can't just have people who take 3 months, 6 months off, like constant time out and stuff like that. You need somebody that's there every day. So some people want these paychecks, and it even happens. It's not even women, right? It's even just the youth. There's a lot of young people right now that prioritize free time and their own time over giving all their time to the company. And in doing so, you forfeit the job that you want because these jobs require that level of commitment. Nothing wrong with women wanting to focus on careers instead of family. Also, society don't trust men to raise kids. Yeah, because men are nasty, aggressive, terrible, horrible human beings.
Here we go. So we've had this conversation. We're open about it. It's good. It's all good. Like, yeah.
Anytime we impose an outcome, we're trying to override the free choices of individuals based upon factors in their own lives.
They're going to demand the actions of large groups of people. And Donald Trump comes along and says, this is crazy making. This is crazy making. Like, are you going to do that? It's one thing for one company, right? But it's another thing for like whole college admissions across the United States. We're going to go.
And this is where we talked about it before. It's the same thing about like the sledgehammer, right? Like you don't use a sledgehammer to solve every problem, right? You use all the different tools in your toolkit. That's not to say that this type of initiative or this type of thing couldn't work in small use cases, in small situations to solve specific problems in very niche areas, because it's a tool. And all tools, if used properly, can get you the proper outcome. But just to paint with a broad brush and say that it's required across everything is never going to work.
I'll come up with a policy for college admissions across the United States. You all have to admit more Native American students. We don't care how you do that, but we want to see it happen. And you're like, what the hell? What is that?
So then to tie all of this together in a clear, concise, comedic way, Sam brings in a prop.
So here's another thing. I want it when you forced it onto you.
And I think, like, to go back to what we talked about in the beginning of the video, I think that obviously if there were, so like more Native Americans, it would be better to have like more representation for Native Americans across like every facet of life, right? I'm sure. But the problem is Native Americans live on reserves, and reserves don't typically have like a really booming, bustling economy. And because of that, I would assume you would do better to influx cash and raise the economy, and doing so raise everybody's ability to attain proper education, which is going to give them a better shot in college than just going through saying all these people need to be admitted. I mean, I don't think this video is really old. This video is posted 2 days ago. That's why I found it relevant. But I will say that I do think there's a lot of context missing, and there's probably a level of trying to drive a narrative by the person who edited the video together, which is fine. That's why we take it and we just add our sort of, we take it and then we add our information on top of it. People talked about this video a long time ago. Yeah, so he's probably just rehashing it then.
You right, bro? You guys are into diversity. Do you like eating? You like foods? This is a Korean This is the pupa of silkworms, okay?
He's making a point here.
This class is about diversity. Like, you gotta have this. This is the problem with diversity. Like, I'm shoving it down your throat, and you're saying like, nah, no thanks, I'm good. And I'm jamming it down your throat.
We need more professors like this, so
So like, I'm definitely curious on this because the professor said that he was in charge of diversity. So I do think that there is a lot of context missing from what the professor said. And there's a lot of context missing from the course overall. If we took it at face value and took a very measured approach to what was being said, I think it created a lot of fun conversations and a lot of really good ways to look at it. But you guys will definitely have to let me know what you think down in the comments below.